My name is Rachel, and at 32 years old, I never expected my own mother would humiliate me on my birthday. Despite years of financial sacrifices and emotional support, I was always made to feel worthless in her eyes. When she handed me that beautifully wrapped box with a smirk, I actually felt hopeful. But inside was nothing but air and a note saying, "The perfect gift for someone who does nothing for her family." Little did she know that empty box would become the vessel for a decade of receipts she never expected to see. If you are watching this right now, I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Drop a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear how I finally stood up for myself after years of silent sacrifice. I grew up in a modest neighborhood in Springfield, Illinois, where our 3-bedroom ranch house was nothing special but felt like home. My earliest memories with my mother, Jessica, were actually warm ones. She would bake chocolate chip cookies on Sunday afternoons, help with school projects, and tuck me in with bedtime stories. I remember feeling safe and loved, believing our bond was unbreakable. Looking back now, I realize those golden days were shorter than they seemed in my childhood memory. Everything changed when my father left us. I was 10 years old when I came home from school one day to find my mother crying at the kitchen table surrounded by scattered papers. Dad had packed his things while we were out and left nothing but a brief note explaining he needed space and would be in touch about arrangements. He moved 3 states away for a job opportunity that apparently could not include his family. The monthly child support checks were consistent but minimal, and his promised weekend visits dwindled to twice a year, then once, then special occasions only. My mother never fully recovered from what she saw as the ultimate betrayal. As weeks turned into months, her sadness hardened into bitterness. She took on extra shifts as a dental receptionist, coming home exhausted and increasingly short-tempered. "This is what happens when you trust people," became her mantra, often muttered under her breath while sorting bills at the kitchen table. I started noticing the subtle shift in how she looked at me too, sometimes with a flash of resentment, as if my face carried too much of my father. By 12, I was preparing most of our meals, doing laundry, and helping my 8-year-old brother Tyler with homework. "You need to step up," Mom would say. I cannot do everything myself, so I did. I learned to grocery shop with coupons, pay attention to sale items, and stretch our limited budget. While other kids my age were at slumber parties or soccer practice, I was figuring out how to remove stains from work clothes and which bills needed paying first. My teenage years brought more responsibility, not less. At 15, I started working weekends at the local grocery store, handing most of my paycheck to Mom for household expenses. I still managed to maintain a 3.8 GPA, join debate club, and occasionally see friends, though social outings were rare luxuries. Meanwhile, Tyler seemed exempt from the same expectations. "He is just a boy," Mom would explain when I questioned the imbalance. "He needs time to be a kid." When college application season arrived during my senior year, my guidance counselor encouraged me to consider schools across the country. "With your grades and extracurriculars, you could get significant scholarships," she told me during one of our meetings. I collected brochures from universities in California, New York, and Colorado, allowing myself brief daydreams about fresh starts in exciting cities. The night I mentioned the possibility of attending college out of state, Mom had one of her worst meltdowns. "So you are just going to abandon us like your father did," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "Who will help with Tyler? Who will help with bills? I cannot believe how selfish you have become." The guilt was crushing. 2 weeks later, I submitted my application only to the state university, 20 minutes from our house, where I could commute from home and continue working my job. Tyler, meanwhile, became increasingly attached to Mom as her clear favorite. 3 years younger than me, he enjoyed privileges. I never had sleepaway summer camps and the latest video game systems, while I wore secondhand clothes and postponed dentist appointments to save money. When I gently pointed this out once, Mom snapped, "Tyler appreciates what I do for him. He does not make everything so difficult." I learned to stop questioning the double standard. During my college graduation ceremony, I spotted my mother and brother in the audience. Mom looked proud for a brief moment when they called my name, but by the time I met them afterward, her expression had returned to its usual mix of fatigue and subtle disappointment. "Well, I guess we should celebrate," she said, flatly checking her watch. "But not too long. I have an early shift tomorrow." As we sat in the restaurant, I pushed aside my dream of moving to Chicago for a marketing position I had been offered. Instead, I accepted a lower-paying job at a local firm and found an affordable apartment just 10 minutes from my family home. The invisible chains tightened. My first job after college was at Marshall Marketing, a small local agency where I started as a junior account coordinator. The pay was modest, but enough to cover my own expenses, plus help Mom with utility bills that mysteriously became my responsibility shortly after I started working. My apartment was a one-bedroom unit in a dated complex. Nothing fancy, but it was mine and only 15 minutes from both work and my childhood home. 6 months into my new adult life, Mom lost her job when the dental practice downsized. It is age discrimination, she insisted, though she never pursued legal action. Instead, she spent weeks at home sending out half-hearted applications while complaining about modern hiring practices. When her unemployment benefits proved insufficient for her mortgage payment, I stepped in with what I thought would be temporary assistance. Just until I find something new, she promised accepting my check with a mixture of entitlement and performative gratitude. You know I would do the same for you. That first mortgage payment I covered turned into 3, then 6, as Mom found reasons why each potential job was unsuitable. When she finally accepted a part-time position at a medical office, it paid significantly less than her previous role, creating a permanent gap that somehow became my responsibility to fill. Around this time, I met Ethan through mutual friends. Smart, kind, with an easy laugh and ambition that matched mine, he quickly became important to me. After 3 months of dating, he started noticing patterns I had normalized. "Why does your mom call during every dinner we have?" he asked one evening after my phone buzzed for the 3rd time with her emergency that turned out to be a question about the cable bill. Later, when I canceled our weekend trip because Mom needed help with household repairs, his frustration was evident. "Rachel, does she ever consider what you need?" he asked gently. "This does not seem balanced." His questions planted seeds of doubt that I tried to ignore. When I tentatively tried setting boundaries, suggesting Mom ask my brother for help, occasionally her tactics were immediate and effective. "Tyler is building his career," she sniffed. "He cannot be distracted right now. Besides, he calls me every Sunday without fail. At least one of my children thinks about me." The guilt would wash over me, drowning out my brief moment of backbone. My friend Amanda provided a different perspective. We had been close since freshman year of college, and she had witnessed my family dynamic firsthand. "Your mom is manipulating you," she said bluntly, over coffee one Saturday. "You are not responsible for her life or her happiness." I dismissed her concerns, defending Mom with practiced excuses about her difficult life and how she had sacrificed for us. Amanda gave me a long look before changing the subject, but her words lingered. 2 years into my job, I received a significant promotion to account manager. The salary increase should have meant more financial freedom, but somehow my expenses only grew. Mom developed persistent migraines that required expensive specialists, not fully covered by her insurance. The roof on her house needed repairs. Tyler needed help with graduate school application fees. Each new expense was presented as a crisis only I could solve. Mom's commentary on my choices became increasingly critical. My apartment was showing poor financial management despite its modest rent. My occasional new clothes were wasteful, even as I wore the same professional outfits weekly. Even my rare dinner out with Ethan elicited passive-aggressive texts. "Must be nice to afford fancy restaurants while your mother eats leftovers." Each barb landed precisely as intended, reinforcing the narrative that I was selfish, despite evidence to the contrary. The summer I turned 27, Tyler announced he had accepted a job offer in Seattle over 2,000 miles away. I expected Mom to react as she had to my similar ambitions years earlier, with accusations of abandonment and emotional manipulation. Instead, she was effusive with pride. "This is such an amazing opportunity. I always knew you would do great things," she told him, helping to pack his belongings and researching apartments in his new city. When I later expressed surprise at her reaction, she shrugged. "Tyler deserves to pursue his dreams. He has always been so considerate of my feelings." The contrast was stunning and painful. As Tyler flourished in his new life, calling Mom weekly but otherwise free from family obligations, my own chains grew heavier. I was now covering half of Mom's mortgage, all utilities, most groceries, and various emergency expenses that arose with suspicious regularity. Ethan's patience was wearing thin, and my own resentment festered beneath my continued compliance. But breaking the pattern seemed impossible, the potential guilt and conflict too overwhelming to face. I told myself this was temporary just until Mom's situation improved, even as years passed with no change in sight. Just after my 29th birthday, Mom called me at work, her voice uncharacteristically small. The doctor found something, she said, and my world tilted on its axis. The diagnosis was fibromyalgia, combined with chronic fatigue syndrome conditions that would require ongoing treatment, lifestyle adjustments, and regular medical supervision. While not immediately life-threatening, the chronic pain and fatigue severely impacted her ability to work full-time hours. I immediately stepped into the role of primary caretaker, researching her conditions late into the night, accompanying her to specialist appointments, and organizing her growing collection of medications, all while maintaining my full-time position at the marketing agency, where deadlines and client expectations could not be adjusted for my family crisis. My days began at 5 in the morning and often ended past midnight with barely a moment to breathe in between responsibilities. The financial strain became nearly unbearable. Even with insurance, the medical bills accumulated rapidly. Specialist co-pays, treatments not covered by her basic plan, and complementary therapies recommended for pain management all added to the growing stack of expenses. I took out a personal loan to cover the most urgent medical costs, adding monthly payments to my already stretched budget. Meanwhile, I continued covering Mom's mortgage, utilities, groceries, and now the additional costs of her modified diet and special ergonomic household items. It was during this period that Ethan finally reached his breaking point. After I missed our 3rd anniversary dinner because Mom was having a particularly bad pain day, he asked to meet at a neutral coffee shop rather than either of our apartments. "I cannot do this anymore, Rachel," he said quietly, looking more sad than angry. "You are drowning in responsibilities that are not yours to carry, and you will not accept help or consider change. I love you, but I cannot watch you disappear into your mother's needs while neglecting your own life." Despite my tears and promises to find more balance, his decision was made. 4 years of building a life together ended that afternoon, another casualty of my family obligations. At work, my performance began suffering noticeably. Projects that once energized me became burdens I struggled to complete. Twice I missed important client meetings due to emergency calls from Mom. My boss Diane called me into her office after the second incident. "Rachel, your work has always been exceptional, but something has clearly changed," she said with genuine concern. "Whatever is happening in your personal life is affecting your professional performance. Consider this a formal warning." The possibility of losing my job, the financial lifeline for both myself and Mom, added another layer of anxiety to my already overwhelming stress. Despite all I was doing, Mom's criticism continued unabated. "You were supposed to pick up my prescription yesterday," she would complain, even when I had spent the previous evening researching new treatment options for her. Or, "This soup is too salty," after I had rushed to prepare meals for her entire week during my precious weekend hours. Each comment diminished the significant sacrifices I was making, reinforcing the message that nothing I did was ever enough. That spring, a major opportunity arose at work, the chance to lead our agency's presentation at a regional marketing conference with potential for significant career advancement and networking. The dates had been on my calendar for months, but 3 days before the conference, Mom's condition flared dramatically. "I cannot be alone right now," she insisted, her voice wavering with pain and strategic vulnerability. After a night of agonizing indecision, I emailed Diane to withdraw from the presentation opportunity. My colleague Jacob took my place and subsequently received a promotion I had been working toward for years. Tyler visited for Christmas that year, his first trip home in 18 months. He stayed for precisely 4 days, during which Mom transformed into a different person. She laughed more, refused my offers of help with a breezy, "I am fine, honey. Go relax," and even baked cookies, despite claiming baking had become impossible with her condition. For Tyler, she displayed only her best self, never the demanding, critical person I encountered daily. When I mentioned helping with her medical bills, he looked genuinely surprised. "She told me she has everything under control," he said with a shrug. "Besides, I am still establishing myself. You are the settled one with the steady job." He returned to Seattle with promises to visit again soon, blissfully unaware of the reality I lived with. My own mental health deteriorated steadily. Anxiety became my constant companion, with panic attacks occurring with increasing frequency. Sleep was elusive, appetite non-existent. Friends stopped calling after too many canceled plans, and my world shrank to the triangle of my apartment, my office, and Mom's house. Amanda remained one of my few connections outside this limited orbit, checking in, despite my frequent inability to reciprocate her efforts at maintaining our friendship. Then came the discovery that shattered what little remained of my illusions. While helping Mom organize some paperwork for her upcoming disability review, I found bank statements she had carefully hidden. According to these documents, she had over $40,000 in savings money, apparently set aside for my father's life insurance policy after he died in a car accident 3 years earlier, an event she had characterized as leaving her financially devastated. All the while, I had been draining my own savings, taking out loans, and sacrificing my future security to cover expenses she could have managed on her own. The betrayal left me gasping for breath in her spare bathroom, the statements clutched in my trembling hands. As my 32nd birthday approached in late October, I expected what had become the usual, a perfunctory text message from Mom, perhaps a quick call from Tyler if he remembered, and nothing more. Birthdays, like most occasions, had long ceased to be celebrations in my adult life, just another day of responsibilities and obligations with perhaps a small cupcake I would buy myself on the way home from work. So I was genuinely surprised when Mom mentioned having a special gift for me during one of my regular visits to check on her condition and restock her groceries. "I have been planning this for weeks," she said with an unusual glimmer in her eyes. "Make sure you come over on your actual birthday. I want to see your face when you open it." Despite years of disappointment, hope flickered to life. Perhaps her health challenges had given her a new perspective on our relationship. Maybe this was the beginning of positive change. Amanda insisted on organizing a small gathering at my apartment on the evening of my birthday, just a few people who really care about you. She invited our college friend Megan, my work colleague Ben, who had been supportive during my professional struggles, and his wife Kara, who I had bonded with at the last office holiday party. "You deserve some celebration," Amanda declared when I protested. "We will keep it simple, just cake and conversation." It had been so long since I had hosted anything social that the prospect was both appealing and anxiety-inducing. I spent the morning of my birthday at Mom's house as requested. She was unusually animated, directing me to sit in the living room while she disappeared into her bedroom, returning with a beautifully wrapped box about the size of a shoebox. The wrapping paper was elegant silver with delicate snowflakes secured with a perfect blue ribbon. "I wanted this to be special," she said, placing it in my hands with ceremonial gravity. "Open it carefully." My heart raced as I gently removed the ribbon and paper, preserving them out of habit, the way she had always insisted during childhood Christmases. The box underneath was white and pristine. Lifting the lid, I felt a moment of confusion. The box appeared empty. Then I noticed a small folded note placed at the bottom. Unfolding it, I read the typed message. "The perfect gift for someone who does nothing for her family emptiness, just like your contribution." The words hit like physical blows. I looked up at Mom, expecting perhaps a laugh indicating this was some kind of twisted joke, but her expression held only smug satisfaction. "I thought it was fitting," she said, her voice calm and deliberate. "All these years I have raised you, sacrificed for you, and now when I need help the most, all I get is the bare minimum. Tyler calls me every week from across the country and sends thoughtful gifts. What do you do besides complain about helping your sick mother?" I sat frozen, the empty box in my hands, feeling suddenly heavy with the weight of injustice. The room swam before my eyes as memories flashed rapid fire, thousands of dollars in support. Countless hours of care, sacrificed relationships and opportunities, all dismissed as nothing by the person who had benefited most from my loyalty. And I knew in that moment that she truly believed her own narrative, that no evidence would ever change the story she had constructed about my inadequacy. My humiliation deepened when I realized she had orchestrated this moment to occur before my small gathering, ensuring I would carry the emotional wound into what should have been a rare evening of enjoyment. The cruelty was calculated, designed to maximize impact and reinforce my place in her distorted family hierarchy. The precious bubble of hope that had formed in recent weeks burst painfully, leaving only cold clarity in its wake. "I should get going," I managed to say, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "Thank you for the gift." I placed the box and its hurtful note on the coffee table, gathered my purse, and walked out without looking back, ignoring her calls about helping her with lunch before I left. In my car, I sat with white knuckles gripping the steering wheel, but no tears came. Something had fundamentally shifted inside me, as though a lifetime of accumulated tears had suddenly crystallized into something harder and more resolute. The drive home passed in a blur. Inside my apartment, I methodically prepared for the evening gathering on autopilot, setting out plates and glasses, arranging the living room, all while the empty box and its message echoed in my mind. When Amanda arrived early to help with final preparations, one look at my face told her something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked, immediately abandoning the snack tray she was arranging. The story spilled out in disjointed sentences, my voice flat with emotional exhaustion. Amanda listened without interruption, her expression moving from shock to outrage. When I finished, she pulled me into a fierce hug. "That is enough, Rachel," she said firmly. "No more. This has gone too far for too long." For once, I did not defend Mom or make excuses. I simply nodded, the kernel of resolution that had formed in my car growing stronger with each passing moment. My birthday gathering proceeded with surface normality, though I participated as if watching from a distance. My friends were kind and attentive, clearly sensing my distress despite my attempts at engagement. As the evening wound down and guests departed with warm wishes, I declined Amanda's offer to stay overnight. "I need to be alone," I told her, "but thank you for everything." After everyone left, I finally allowed myself to fully feel the magnitude of what had happened. Sitting on my living room floor, surrounded by discarded gift wrap and birthday cards expressing affection, I struggled to accept I broke down completely. Years of suppressed grief, anger, and betrayal erupted in gut-wrenching sobs that left me gasping. I cried for the little girl who had taken on adult burdens too early, for the young woman who had sacrificed her dreams, for the adult who had given everything only to be told it was nothing. I cried until there was nothing left but calm emptiness and the certainty that something had to change. The week following my birthday, I called in sick to work for the first time in years, using accumulated personal days I had never felt entitled to take. I silenced my phone, ignoring the barrage of texts from Mom questioning my absence from my usual support duties. Those 4 days of solitude became a period of intense introspection, examining the patterns that had defined my life for so long. I began by creating a detailed accounting of the financial support I had provided over the past decade. Bank statements, credit card bills, check registers, and digital payment records spread across my dining table in chronological piles. The mortgage assistance alone totaled over $45,000. Utilities, groceries, and medical expenses not covered by insurance added another $37,000. Personal loans I had taken out specifically to cover her expenses, including interest, approached $20,000. There were also smaller expenses that had accumulated significantly over time: household items, clothing I had purchased for her meals out I had treated her to while I ate ramen at home to save money. By the third day, I had calculated a conservative total $112,000 over 10 years. The number was staggering, especially considering my modest salary and the personal sacrifices that had made this support possible. This was not including the countless hours of unpaid labor driving to appointments, managing medications, cooking, cleaning, researching treatments, and providing emotional support that was rarely reciprocated. On the recommendation of Amanda, who had been checking in daily, I scheduled an appointment with a therapist. Dr. Winters listened to my abbreviated life story with compassionate attention before asking the question that cut to the heart of everything. What would happen if you stopped? The simplicity of it left me momentarily speechless. What would happen if I simply stopped carrying the financial and emotional burden of my mother's life? She would struggle, I said automatically, then paused. But she has resources I did not know about, and she might finally have to ask Tyler to help or manage her money differently. The realization dawned slowly: the world would not end if I stepped back. Mom would adapt, find other solutions, perhaps even develop more self-sufficiency. The only guaranteed outcome would be my own increased freedom and well-being. Dr. Winters helped me understand the concept of boundaries in a way I never had before. Boundaries are not about controlling others, she explained. They are about clarifying what you will and will not accept in your life. Your mother may never change her behavior, but you can change how you respond to it. We discussed practical steps toward greater independence, including reduced financial support, limited contact, and eventually physical distance. That weekend, I reconnected with Amanda over lunch, my first social outing in weeks that was not centered around obligation. I am making changes, I told her as we settled into a corner booth at our favorite cafe. You were right all along. This is not healthy or sustainable. Her relief was palpable, but she was careful not to say I told you so, instead focusing on supporting my nascent plan for independence. The first concrete step was finding a new place to live. My current apartment had been chosen primarily for its proximity to Mom's house, making it easy to provide daily assistance. With Amanda's help, I spent the next 2 weekends viewing apartments in different neighborhoods, eventually finding a one-bedroom unit in a newer building on the opposite side of town, a full 30-minute drive from Mom's house. The rent was only slightly higher than my current place, but the psychological distance it would provide felt invaluable. Telling Mom about my planned move was every bit as difficult as I had anticipated. I chose to do it during a Sunday afternoon visit, approaching the subject as a positive development rather than an escape. I found a great new apartment with better amenities, I explained, as casually as possible. The lease starts next month. Her reaction progressed through predictable stages: disbelief, anger, guilt manipulation, and finally tearful accusations of abandonment. "How can you do this to me when you know I need help?" she demanded. "Who will check on me in the evenings? What if I have an emergency?" Each question was designed to hook into my well-developed sense of responsibility, but for once, I had prepared my responses in advance. "I will still help when I can," I said calmly, "but from a distance that works better for my own health and job requirements." I did not mention the financial changes that would accompany my move, saving that conversation for after I had established physical separation. When she realized her usual tactics were not working, she resorted to cold silence, turning away from me in a clear dismissal. I left feeling both guilty and strangely liberated, the conflicting emotions I suspected would be my companions for months to come. As my move date approached, I devoted evenings and weekends to a secret project that had taken shape in my mind during those days of reflection. The empty birthday box still sat on my bedroom dresser, a reminder of the breaking point that had catalyzed my changes. It would serve a new purpose, now becoming the vessel for the truth Mom had so long refused to see. I methodically organized the financial records I had gathered, creating neat categories: mortgage payments, medical expenses, utilities, groceries, household repairs, and miscellaneous support. Each category received its own folder, containing photocopies of checks, bank statements, and receipts spanning a decade of support. I created a summary sheet for each category listing dates, amounts, and totals. The final touch was a comprehensive spreadsheet showing the complete picture of my financial contributions to her well-being. As I worked on this project late into the night, I realized that what had begun as a plan for revenge was evolving into something more nuanced, a clear statement of facts that would stand as evidence against years of gaslighting and emotional manipulation. This was not about hurting her as she had hurt me, but about establishing the truth that had been buried beneath her revisionist family narrative. Mom's birthday was approaching in just under a month, the timing almost poetic in its symmetry. I knew exactly how I would present my years of receipts, returning her empty box filled with the proof of my supposedly empty contribution. The plan gave me a sense of purpose during the stressful process of moving and establishing my new independence. It was not bitter vengeance I sought, but accountability, and perhaps, though I barely dared hope for it, recognition of the reality of our relationship. Mom's 63rd birthday fell on a Tuesday in late November, but the family dinner to celebrate was scheduled for the previous Saturday evening, accommodating everyone's work schedules. Tyler would not be traveling from Seattle, but would call during dinner, a gesture that would once have highlighted my inadequacy despite my constant physical presence. Now I recognized it as simply the different ways we had each chosen to manage our complicated family relationships. In the weeks leading up to the dinner, I had been carefully implementing the changes discussed with Dr. Winters. After moving to my new apartment, I had reduced my visits to twice weekly, rather than daily limited my financial support to a fixed amount that would help with utilities, but not cover everything as before, and started declining the midnight phone calls about non-emergency matters. Mom's reactions ranged from cold anger to tearful accusations, but I maintained my new boundaries with a firmness that surprised even me. The morning of the birthday dinner, I retrieved the box from my closet and reviewed its contents one final time. The folders were impeccably organized, the documentation comprehensive, without being overwhelming. I had decided against including a letter explaining my feelings, believing the financial records would speak more eloquently than any emotional appeal. This was about facts, not feelings, a distinction Mom had never seemed able to make when it came to our relationship. I wrapped the box in elegant burgundy paper, finishing it with a gold ribbon that matched the card attached. The aesthetic care I took felt important somehow, a reflection of the genuine effort I had always put into our relationship, despite the lack of reciprocity. The card contained only a simple birthday wish signed with my name, no elaborations or expressions of love that would have felt forced under the circumstances. Arriving at Mom's house that evening, I found her sister Aunt Patricia already there, along with Patricia's husband Uncle Robert and their adult daughter Melissa, who had always been treated as the golden niece, in contrast to my perpetual inadequacy. The dining room table was set with Mom's best china, a dramatic elevation from the paper plates she often claimed were necessary due to her condition when only I was visiting. "There she is," Mom said, as I entered, her tone suggesting I was late, though I had arrived precisely at the agreed time. "Put your gift with the others." She gestured to a small side table already holding several packages. I added mine to the collection, noting that its elegant wrapping stood out among the others, a small detail that gave me silent satisfaction. Dinner proceeded with the usual family dynamics. Aunt Patricia dominated the conversation with stories about Melissa's recent promotion. Uncle Robert made his typical comments about politics that everyone politely ignored, and Mom alternated between playing the gracious hostess and making subtle digs about my recent unavailability. "Rachel has been so busy with her new apartment," she told Patricia with a martyred smile. "Barely has time for her poor mother anymore." I let the comments slide past without defensive responses, a new strategy that clearly unsettled her. The anticipated call from Tyler came during dessert, his voice on speakerphone filling the dining room as he wished Mom happy birthday and chatted briefly about his recent work project. "Love you, Mom," he said before hanging up. "Wish I could be there." Mom beamed at the phone as if it were Tyler himself, her expression more genuinely warm than any look she had directed at me in years. After dinner came the gift-opening ritual. Mom sat in her favorite armchair while we gathered around Aunt Patricia, documenting the moment with her phone camera. The first few presents yielded the expected reactions, exaggerated delight over Melissa's expensive scarf, appreciative comments about Uncle Robert, and Aunt Patricia's gift card to her favorite restaurant. Then she reached for my package, her expression already arranged in the polite mask she typically wore when acknowledging my efforts. "This is heavy," she commented, shaking it slightly. "What could it be?" The ribbon came away easily, followed by the careful removal of the wrapping paper. When she lifted the lid and saw the neatly arranged folders inside, rather than a traditional gift, confusion crossed her face. "What is this?" "Take a look," I said quietly, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. "It is everything I have done for this family over the past 10 years. She removed the top folder, labeled mortgage payments, and opened it, her expression shifting from confusion to alarm as she scanned the first page of documentation. "I do not understand," she said, though her tone suggested she was beginning to. She flipped through more pages, her fingers trembling slightly as she encountered check after check, statement after statement, all bearing my name and significant amounts directed to her benefit. "There are 6 folders," I explained in the same calm voice, aware of our audience, but past the point of caring about appearances. "Mortgage, utilities, medical expenses, groceries, household repairs, and miscellaneous. The total is on the summary page at the front. $112,837.42 over 10 years, not including thousands of hours of care and support." The room had gone completely silent. Aunt Patricia had lowered her phone, no longer recording. Uncle Robert studied his dessert plate with sudden fascination. Melissa looked between Mom and me with undisguised curiosity, sensing the seismic shift occurring in family dynamics she had always accepted without question. "Why are you doing this?" Mom asked her, voice smaller now, defensive rather than attacking. "Are you keeping score? Expecting repayment?" No, I replied. I am establishing facts. On my birthday last month, you gave me an empty box with a note saying it represented what I contribute to this family, nothing. I thought you should see exactly what nothing looks like. The mention of her cruel gift caused Aunt Patricia to inhale sharply. Jessica, you did not really do that, she said, but the question held no actual doubt, just disappointment in her sister's behavior being exposed so plainly. Mom's tactics shifted rapidly, tears forming in her eyes as she attempted to reframe the narrative. I have been so sick, she said, looking to Patricia and Robert for support. Rachel has helped, yes, but that is what family does. I raised her, sacrificed everything for her after her father abandoned us. This feels like an attack on a sick woman on her birthday. In the past, this performance would have immediately triggered my guilt and need to make amends. Today, it simply confirmed the rightness of my actions. This is not an attack, I said. It is a correction of the record. You have resources you hid from me while I drained my savings and took out loans to support you. You have consistently dismissed and devalued my contributions while praising Tyler for the bare minimum. I am not asking for thanks or repayment. I am asking for acknowledgement of reality. I stood up, surprisingly steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through me. The receipts are copies. Keep them or throw them away, that is your choice. But I wanted you to know that I know my worth, even if you never will. I turned to the others. Thank you for dinner. I should be going now. Aunt Patricia rose as if to stop me, but Uncle Robert placed a restraining hand on her arm, shaking his head slightly. As I gathered my coat and purse, I heard Melissa ask Mom in a hushed, but clearly audible voice, "Did you really give her an empty box for her birthday?" The question hung in the air behind me as I walked out the door, closing it quietly on the scene of long overdue truth-telling. The days following Mom's birthday dinner brought the expected fallout. My phone filled with missed calls and voicemails ranging from tearful pleas to angry accusations. Aunt Patricia texted to express her shock at both Mom's treatment of me and the extent of my financial support, which had been completely unknown to the extended family. We would have helped if we had known, she wrote, prompting complex feelings about the years I had spent shouldering burdens alone. I maintained my new boundaries with calm determination. When I finally did answer one of Mom's calls, I kept the conversation brief and factual. I am not cutting you off completely, I explained. I will continue helping with the utilities as I have been since moving. But the additional support has to end. You have savings, and it is time for me to rebuild mine. Her attempts to pull me back into emotional chaos met with gentle but firm redirection. After years of being tossed in stormy seas of guilt and obligation, I had finally found solid ground. Tyler called 3 days after the dinner, having heard a version of events from Mom that undoubtedly minimized her role and maximized my cruelty. To my surprise, his first question was not accusatory but genuinely curious. Is it true you have been paying half her mortgage for years? The conversation that followed was the most honest exchange we had ever had as adult siblings, revealing how differently we had experienced our family and our separate relationships with Mom. I had no idea, he said repeatedly, genuine regret in his voice. She always told me she was doing fine financially, that your help was occasional and voluntary. I would have contributed more if I had known. His ignorance was not entirely his fault, I realized. We had both been manipulated by Mom's differential treatment and selective sharing of information kept separate to prevent exactly the kind of alliance and clarity we were now developing. Walking away from the patterns of a lifetime proved liberating in ways I had not anticipated. Without the constant drain on my finances, I was able to begin repaying the personal loans that had accumulated during years of support. My work performance improved dramatically now that emergency calls no longer interrupted my focus and depleted my energy. Diane noticed the change, commenting during my quarterly review that I seemed present and engaged in a way you have not been for years. The physical distance of my new apartment created space for rebuilding my neglected social connections. I joined a book club that met weekly at a local coffee shop, finding unexpected pleasure in discussing novels rather than medical symptoms. Amanda and I established a regular Sunday brunch tradition, sometimes joined by new acquaintances who gradually became friends. My apartment became a place of peace rather than simply a stopping point between obligations. 3 months after the confrontation, Mom reached out with a different tone than her previous communications. "Can we meet for coffee?" her text read. "Just to talk." I agreed with cautious optimism, suggesting a cafe halfway between our home's neutral territory for what might be a challenging conversation. She looked older when I saw her somehow diminished, without the energy of her usual dramatic personas. I have been thinking about everything she began after our drinks arrived. At first, I was just angry and hurt. But then I started really looking at those receipts at the dates and amounts. It was eye-opening. She paused, stirring her coffee unnecessarily. I never saw it all together like that before. It was easier to focus on what you were not doing than acknowledge how much you were doing. It was not exactly an apology, but it was more recognition than I had ever expected. "Tyler has been helping more," she continued. "He set up a monthly transfer for some of the bills. And I have been better about my own budgeting." She did not mention the hidden savings, but her improved financial management suggested she was finally taking responsibility for her resources. Our relationship began a slow, cautious reconstruction on new terms. We established a schedule of weekly phone calls and bi-weekly visits, a fraction of my previous involvement, but sustainable for my new life. I maintained firm boundaries around money, occasionally helping with unexpected expenses, but no longer serving as her primary financial support. The criticism did not disappear completely but decreased significantly when met with calm detachment rather than desperate attempts to please. Tyler and I developed a relationship independent of Mom for the first time in our lives. Our monthly video calls evolved from awkward check-ins about Mom's needs to genuine conversations about our lives, interests, and perspectives. "I always thought you resented me," he admitted during one call. "Now I understand you were just drowning in responsibilities I never had to face." The growing connection with my brother was an unexpected gift emerging from the wreckage of old family patterns. 1 year after the empty box incident, my life had transformed in ways I once could not have imagined. I had received a significant promotion at work, started dating again with healthier expectations, and even begun planning a vacation, my first in over a decade. Dr. Winters and I had reduced our sessions to monthly check-ins, focusing on maintaining boundaries and continuing to build a life centered on my own well-being rather than others' expectations. The empty box that had once symbolized such cruelty now sat on my bookshelf as a reminder of my journey. Sometimes I caught sight of it while moving around my apartment and felt a moment of pain, but increasingly it represented not what I lacked, but what I had found the courage to value myself, when others would not the strength to break generational patterns of obligation and guilt, and the wisdom to distinguish between genuine love and emotional manipulation. Family relationships are complex, often rooted in unspoken expectations and roles assigned in childhood that can persist long into adulthood. Breaking free requires not only recognizing unhealthy patterns, but finding the courage to disrupt them, even when doing so brings conflict and discomfort. The hardest lesson I learned was that sometimes the people who should love us most are the least capable of doing so in healthy ways, and that creating distance is not abandonment but self-preservation. My journey continues with ongoing adjustments and occasional setbacks. Some days the old guilt resurfaces the ingrained response to prioritize others' needs above my own. But those moments grow less frequent and less powerful as I practice new patterns of self-respect and appropriate boundaries. The path forward is not about severing connections but transforming them into something sustainable and mutually respectful, or having the courage to step away when transformation proves impossible. Have you ever found yourself trapped in a cycle of giving that left you emotionally and financially drained? I would love to hear your stories of setting boundaries or recognizing your own worth in the comments below. If my experience resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of personal growth and transformation. Remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and others, is to break patterns that no longer serve anyone's highest good. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to fill your own empty boxes with truth and self-respect.